Hey y'all, from Spindle Mountain Mercantile, I am Heather. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I've got 5 fantastic creations for you, so let's get started right away with project number 1. Another vendor in the shop where my booth is located was having a half-price sale, so I scored this awesome round chalkboard for a cool $5. I sprayed it with Rust-Oleum Mirror Effect, and then I wiped that down before it was dry. Next, I sprayed it with a lot of water and sprayed it again with the Mirror Effects, tapping it dry. I didn't want the entire surface to look the same, so in a few small areas, I rubbed with the paper towel and then I dabbed over that again. Finally, I sprayed it again with lots of water and added paint over the top of that and left it alone overnight. At first glance, Madeline is a book full of butterflies, birds, ribbons, and flowers, and you might think they're all the same. But upon closer inspection, you see only 2 pages match. One other page has garland with all the different designs. The other remaining 6 pages are all different. Today, I'm using the blue page. I added the bouquet right to the lower middle and then put the bird above it just to the side as if she's flying away with some of the flowers from the bouquet to make her nest. I removed the glass from a $5 yard sale clock and used one of my misting bottles filled half with water and half with apple cider vinegar. Then I sprayed the entire piece of glass, letting some of the drips get pretty big, and I filled up the entire space. Before it could dry, I took out that same Mirror Effects spray and sprayed the entire piece of glass, and I mean, I really made sure it was covered. I didn't give that paint any time to dry, and I took out a wadded up paper towel and started very carefully dabbing. I almost immediately realized very carefully wasn't going to cut it, so I went to town on that thing, and in the center where the pictures are going to be, I dabbed with a lot of gusto. I turned the glass back over and just held it over the bird so I could see where I needed to make sure it had been cleaned off. By this time, it's getting pretty dry. It doesn't take long for that paint to get dry. So I gave it a little spray with my water vinegar mix. And mind you, I still didn't get it clean. I left quite a bit of smudgy paint there. So you can't see the bird and the bouquet perfectly, but you can see them just enough. When you buy E6000 for crafting, don't get this one. See that flat top? Get this one with the pointed tip. And if you do accidentally buy the other one, it's okay. You can buy these tips on Amazon, and I will leave a link for that in the description. We thought E6000 would work best because it's really good on different surfaces, and that makes it even better for putting 2 different surfaces together. You can get E6000 in different colors, and we are using clear. If you want something that's going to adhere quickly, this might not be the glue for you. You could use a 2-part epoxy. I would not recommend a hot glue gun only. You could maybe use it to hold something together temporarily while the other adhesive dries. I just don't trust hot glue guns with glass. And also, I don't like how thick the glue is when it dries. My sweet husband wants y'all to know how important it is to put something heavy on your glass to let it dry overnight. He only put it around the rim where the glue is, and I want you to know how funny it is. I think he's using beans. He doesn't know it at that time, but my sweet mama and I had filmed a short little video of her explaining why she no longer thinks fart jokes are funny, and he used beans. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but anyway, I really do appreciate him, and I know y'all do too. Thank you, sweet husband.
You're welcome.
All the ladies out there love you.
I love all the ladies.
I mean, seriously, he totally cracks me up. All right, moving on. For the next part, we are using a mold from Iron Orchid Designs 2026 spring release, and it's called Wreath and Swags. We will be casting the molds with IOD's air dry clay. I'm only using one part of the swags for this next step, and I'm making probably, man, I bet I made 12 of these. However many you need to go around your whatever you're making, that's how many you need. And I didn't do the stem part. I only did the parts where it has flowers and leaves. This next part is kind of hard to explain, so you're really going to have to watch. I want to make sure the clay is glued to the surface on the glass and the surface of the frame. It's going to kind of go at an angle between those two. I don't want it to be, flat on the frame and then flat on the edge of the frame on the inside and then flat on the glass. I want it to be flat and kind of a slide and then flat again. Because I want to make sure I keep the integrity of all the little flowers, I am only putting a lot of pressure on the edges. And when I do put pressure right on top of the flowers, I kind of spread it out over my entire finger instead of just putting one point down there. I'm telling you right now, this way didn't work, but I wanted to share it with you anyway. I'm using DIY Cottage Color white linen to paint the molds. This is after I shaped them. And then I tried this with 2 of the different molds, and I glued them onto the frame after they had dried. I can't let them dry too much because I don't want the clay to get dry. I have to still be able to shape it to make sure it fits really well. I did this with 2 of the molds, and of course, I got paint on the glass, and here I am cleaning it off with a wet paintbrush. I did get it all off, and while I was doing that, I thought, you know what, I just need to remake those 2 and put all the molds on the mirror and leave it overnight so they can get really dry. And that's exactly what I did. The next morning, I just picked them up from the mirror, and you can see they formed perfectly. I could not get the 2 up that I tried with the paint and glue the night before, but it's okay. I just had to make a couple of more. I just hate wasting this stuff. It's my precious. I'm using Rust-Oleum 2x Ultra Cover in Ultra Matte White. And I'm only giving it 1 coat, but I'm not spraying too thick. I'm just going around it a couple of times and making sure that the paint gets into the grooves but doesn't puddle into the grooves. I let the molds dry thoroughly, and now you can see I am painting the frame with that cottage color white linen. I don't show it, but I did distress this a little bit just by wiping off some of the paint while it was still wet. You can't wet distress this paint because it has a sealer in it. I didn't want to sand it because I just want some of the silver that I inevitably got on the frame to show through the white. I don't want natural wood to be what pops through. I thought about laying the molds down in order when I spray painted them so I could just put them back in where they were, but it really didn't matter because there was a little bit of shrinkage and there were some gaps. I knew once I pushed them all together, there would be a pretty significant gap left over. And when I was putting them back in, some of the places where they had broken left a few gaps. And my sweet husband noticed also there were some places where I had formed it over the edge of the frame a little bit tighter, so it kind of was closer to the frame, and I needed to make that even. In order to fix all of that, I made some more molds, but this time I just did that little piece of wreath and swags that's like a bouquet, and then I picked it apart. I took apart some of the leaves and some of the flowers. I think I left a couple of flowers on with 1 leaf, and I did maybe 3 of those. Then I went around the entire frame, and my sweet husband and I found places where there were gaps or maybe a crack that needed to be covered up that was significant, and places where it needed to be closer over the glass. And there was a couple of places where you could really see the glue still. So we covered those up. And by the way, I did paint them first. And all of the paints I used had built-in sealer, which means I was done at this point. At the end, I took pictures inside and outside because whatever was reflecting off the mirror really changed how it looked. And y'all, I made a mirror. I made a mirror from scratch. Can't believe I did this. Project number 2. Two things about long, skinny molds. I like to use one continuous piece of clay, and that way it's less likely to break. Secondly, they don't like to be released from the molds, so I like to use my fingernail and just coax out each section gently. And I sped this part up so you could watch that whole process. I bet I turned over this little sign that my friend Sherry gave me probably 5 times to make sure everything was centered. I'm using Type Bond Quick and Thick. It's a fabulous glue that works on all different surfaces, and I've never had an issue attaching air dry clay onto any object when I use this glue. The natural tendency of this bow is for the tails to hang down, but I wanted them to flow out to the sides, so I moved them and made a huge mess. I thought, well, I'll just show them how I cleaned up the mess. Yeah, I made it worse. I just took it in the bathroom and rinsed it off. I'm using crinoline as a base for one of my paint inlays. This one has a particularly different name that I have a hard time pronouncing, so I thought I would make a separate reel where I could practice saying it and you could watch me learn. Listen, some of us understand when all hope is futile, and I'm okay with that. And for the record, I adore the names IOD chooses for their products. They like to name them after the places where they found the original artwork or the person who inspired or painted the original artwork, both of whom have wonderfully beautiful names that are also very foreign. I'm just saying, it would be a lot easier for me to pronounce the names if they bought stuff made by Bob in Utah. So I'm using this cow, or as some of y'all might call her, this bovine. Rub-on transfers are made of ink, but inlays are made of paint. When you apply an IOD paint inlay, paint is physically embedded into the surface of your project. After drying, the carrier paper is removed, leaving an authentic painted design. Paint inlays are made to be used with mineral chalk-based type paint, but you can use them with other mediums. However, I recommend before you try something extravagant like that, practice with little pieces by following the manufacturer's directions. IOD has some great projects on their own website and in the IOD Creative Tribe in their Facebook group. What you're watching right now is something I saw Susie on the farm do in one of her videos. You simply get your paintbrush wet and you go over the paint inlay and brush it like you would a painting with watercolors. I'm using short brush strokes so that it matches the cow's hair. I'm going to show you my whole process here because I wasn't really pleased with how it turned out. There were parts of it I really liked, but I felt like after I guess you could say blurred the paint, I didn't like it so much being just two-toned, and I wanted more color. I wasn't sure how to add that in, so I set it aside, and it sat there for 2 weeks before I figured it out. When I got it back out, the first thing I had to do was finish the bow. So I'm using Debbie's dark wax and just a soft little brush to add some to the top and maybe just curve it over the edges a little bit. And then I used a soft, clean towel to rub that in. I didn't really like these brightly colored pieces of wheat, but I wanted to incorporate them somehow in this design because you can see around the frame of the inlay, it has a kind of braided wheat design. I decided to start with a base of lamb's ear. I put 2 big lamb's ear directly across from each other on each side of my plaque. Then I added 2 more smaller lamb's ear leaves on top of those. I don't want this whole thing to be matchy-match on both sides, but I wanted to start with a base that matches. I'm just using my hot glue gun with Gorilla brand glue. It sticks the best and stays the best, in my opinion. The next florals I'm putting are not the exact same florals, but the tones match each other and they're about the same size. I put those floral heads on different stems that were left over from some lavender I got at Dollar Tree. I did that because the leaves of the lavender stem match the color of the lamb's ear. I did this same step again with more lamb's ear and then topped it with some, I don't know what kind of floral this is. It is a bunch of different small pieces of flower. Then I added a chrysanthemum in the middle, and I found some different shades of greenery to put in different places. And also some of the greenery has little white berries on it or buds. Then I started using this stuff, which is almost the last of my stash. I found this on the side of the road and it's amazing. I don't know what it's called and I haven't seen it in the stores. I've seen stuff kind of similar, but this is like a whole bunch of pieces of, I don't know, it's a flat piece of like stiff ribbon or something. It's not wire. And they're all kind of barely glued together at the top so you can peel them apart. And you have a whole bunch of little stems with berries on them or buds. And I just cut those off however long I wanted them, put a little bit of glue and added them right to the dot of glue. With those and the other greenery that's a little bit brighter that I added earlier, now I feel comfortable adding the bright green wheat pieces. I filled it in with more floral, and this got me inspired to keep working on the plaque itself. So I got out my Debbie's Design Diary copper patina called Pennies from Heaven, and I added some to the bow. And I thought I could just work away from there. I wasn't afraid to put it on the bow. I was afraid to put it other places. And I thought, if I can do it here, I can do it anywhere. So I started going around the edge and I didn't want it to be like a straight line. So I went at different angles with my brush and I kind of rolled part of it and then other parts I let just the end of part of the bristles go over the top. So it had a different variety of looks. And I suppose you could go over that and rub it with a towel if you wanted to blend it in more, but I like how that turned out. So I left it to dry on its own. I added some of the pennies from heaven to parts of the frame. And I thought, I should make the bow on this paint inlay match the bow above it. And then I thought, I'm going to add some paint. I'm going to really do watercolors. Well, you can see here, I'm doing the wheat way too bright. This is Debbie's DIY Cottage Colors. One is Vintage Pink and the other is Garden Sage. I just kept getting my brush wet until I got the consistency I wanted, and I added a little bit to the butterfly too. This piece turned out pretty whimsical, so it's going to need a bow that matches. For that, I took a big piece of fabric that had different labels in muted colors, and I tore 2 strips off of it and frayed them. Then I took different pieces of lace in different lengths, and I laid them down on top of one of the strips of fabric. You're going to maybe have to watch this a couple of times because it's really hard to explain. I took the other piece of fabric and wrapped it around the pile in the center, and I tied a bow like you would tie your shoelaces. I pulled it really, really tight. So now I have 2 loops with 2 shorter pieces of fabric, all of the lace, and the longer piece of fabric that I didn't tie 2 loops. I'm going to take those 2 long pieces of fabric and glue them to the back of my plaque. I'm just using my glue gun, and it doesn't get really hot, so I can touch my fingers to the fabric and really push so that glue goes up through the stitches and makes it really stuck. I made sure it was centered. Remember how I kept turning it over earlier to make sure it was in the center? Well, this is where I realized the stand at the bottom is not centered with the hook at the top. So we're not going to worry about that little hook. We're just going to use the bow to hang it up. And if you want to use the stand, you can just tuck the bow behind it. There were so many times I almost completely gave up on this. But now I simply adore my little bovine in her plaque of many colors. Project number 3. This is a repeat of something I made a couple of weeks ago, but I liked it so much I wanted to make one for myself and add some flowers from this book called By Any Other Name. I can pronounce it. Yay. I'm going to fussy cut one of these roses, and fussy cut just means you cut right around the edge. Some people might think these cups are collectibles, and to some people they are, but I got 24 of them for $4. I've had 8 of them in my booth for about 2 years, and I've only sold 2. I'm kind of thinking now they'll serve a better purpose glued to something else hanging on my wall than they will gathering dust in my shed or my booth. The secret to applying a transfer to a curved object is to let the transfer figure out where it wants to be applied first. That carrier sheet is flat and it wants to stay flat. So as soon as the transfer starts sticking to your surface, the carrier sheet is going to lift off quite easily. Something like this, I always use my fingers to burnish. I want to seal these transfers, so I'm using Debbie's Design Diary Liquid Patina in Crystal Clear Chandelier, and I'm applying it with a brush only on the transfer. I do make sure to go over the edge just a little bit, and that seals the edge of the transfer so humidity and liquid won't get between the transfer and the cup. To figure out the placement of the transfers for the plate, I put the little yellow bowl where it's going to be, and then I designed around it. The transfer on the right is the leftover roses from what I cut out for the cup. So part of it is cut kind of wonky. That's okay. I can layer transfers, and I'm just going to put another rose coming from the other side over that wonky edge. Whenever I put 2 transfers together like this, I like to apply the next one at that place and then move away from it. And that's why I did this stem last. And it also worked out where the stem went over the edge. It just was a smoother application. I cut out some little rose buds, and some of them were too big, so I just kind of cut them to make them look littler. And then I found places to tuck them in like they were coming out naturally from behind the bigger roses. I put my little bowl and cup back on to find more placement for a butterfly and a label. When everything was applied, I used the same technique with Debbie's Crystal Clear Chandelier Liquid Patina to seal the plate. Not long after we were first married, my sweet husband taught me about 2-part epoxy. For today's project, I'm using this Gorilla brand, but this is my favorite. It's JB Weld, and we get the best price at Harbor Freight. It costs a lot more for a package, but the per ounce price is phenomenally lower. If you don't want to spend a lot of money before you give this a try, I would recommend trying out the Super Glue brand that you can find at Dollar Tree. You mix the 2 parts equally and then stir it following the manufacturer directions. Mine recommend 1 minute until it turns white. I'm just using a stem from a piece of floral, and I'm putting it right on the rim of the bowl. Then I place the bowl exactly where I want it on the plate. You do have time to work with this because it doesn't stick immediately. I should have waited till it was dry to attach the cup because I can't believe I did this, y'all. I put it on crooked. It's not a huge deal, and if you're not looking at it the right way, you might not even notice. It is what it is. I'm glad I made it for myself. First, I put some of the epoxy in the bowl. Then I put the cup in it where I wanted the cup to be. I lifted the cup out and used the parts that had spread away from the cup and added that to the handle and put more on the cup. It needs to sit in the same exact place all night long, so I found different items to prop it up, and I think I did pretty good with my little menagerie of sorts. And I promise you, it was really stuck together and will not come apart. I wadded up some shipping paper and glued it to the bottom of the cup. Then I put lots of glue on top of that and added some greenery. I put more glue and pressed my nest into place and pushed pretty firmly. Then I took a piece of lace ribbon, tied it in a bow, and glued it into place on the handle. I can't believe I finally intentionally made something for myself, and I love it. Project number 4. I always try to include a super easy project, and there are 2 parts to this one, and the first part is the easy project. These are some chargers I found at a place where you can throw as much as you can into a tote and you pay $10. So it probably cost me about 5 cents because I got a lot of stuff in that tote. You can buy these at Dollar Tree, and Hobby Lobby has a great selection that changes seasonally. Just make sure before you go to Hobby Lobby, anything you buy seasonally is on sale, because if you buy it this week and it's not on sale, it will be next week. Applying this rose stem was super basic, so I didn't go over those details, but I wanted you to see how I applied this label. I worked from the center of the plate and worked my way out. That way I got all the smooth part flat, and as I work up that curved part, there might be some wrinkles, but it will be not as easy to see them on the curved part as it would if I worked my way down and the wrinkles were on the flat part. Hope that makes sense. Sometimes the words that are in my brain don't come out the way I'm seeing them, and I think they sound totally different. And that's why I sped up this next part so you could see the whole process instead of listening to me trying to explain it. After everything was applied, I went over the entire surface with Debbie's Liquid Patina Crystal Clear Chandelier. After I was done applying it, I went back over the whole thing and made sure all the brush strokes went the same direction. Then I applied a sticky hook on the back. I found these on Amazon, and in the description, I will leave a link. For the second piece in this project, I'm painting a charger with my crappy crinoline, and as my regulars know, that's the crinoline that I spilt on the floor, and then I just scraped it up with a piece of paper and poured it back in the can. I know I could strain it and get those pieces out, but I pay good money to put stuff into my paint to give it texture, like salt wash or sand. I like it this way, and I want it to look old, so I left it. And I use it quite a bit, actually. I did make sure all the brush strokes went the same way, and if you do want cleaner brush strokes, and you don't have contaminated paint, you can use a mister and just add a little bit of water to your paint. And as you brush, the brush strokes kind of just disappear. I'm not sure what the science is behind it, but a lot of people like to seal their paint before they put their transfers on. It could be the brand of paint or the kind of paint. It could be the humidity where you live. I don't know. I don't seal mine, and I never have a problem. That's something you might have to just figure out on your own. Before I applied the transfer, I did some wet distressing. I simply took a wet towel and wrung it out really good, and I rubbed off some of the paint. Some of it I did in a circular motion, other parts I did straight across, and I tried to make sure the straight across went the same direction so it didn't like crisscross. I added some other elements like some butterflies and a label, and then I sealed the entire thing with Debbie's DIY Liquid Patina Crystal Clear Chandelier. The reason I covered the whole thing is because I wanted it to have the same sheen over the entire charger. After adding the hook to the back, I was done. From a booth owner point of view, I do want to share that when I put more work into these, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to make more money. I believe when customers see these, they just see a different color charger with different transfers. They don't see the work that goes into it. So if you're just trying to get a good variety of chargers to sell in a booth or at an event, I would probably just buy different colored chargers and add different transfers. This doesn't mean that people don't appreciate your work. I think they just don't understand it. For me, I love doing this extra work. It's part of why I started the channel. I want to encourage people who don't think they are very creative to go ahead and try to make things that bring their heart joy. Y'all, I made a mirror. Can you believe it? Never thought I'd be making a mirror, but I'm kind of proud of myself. Not in a like stuck up way proud, like prideful proud, but in a like accomplished, like I feel like I can do more now. And I'm going to keep trying to do more and do better. And I'm so glad y'all are here to watch and to maybe get that encouragement to do the same thing yourself. Thank you so much to those of you who have come back to watch another one of our videos, and welcome to everyone who is new. If you liked this video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel so you can see more of what we make, and maybe you could get encouraged to make something too. You can find IOD and DIY and a few other things on our website at spindlemountainmercantile.com. Next week, I'll be back with Mama. We have a few great things up our sleeves, and we are excited to show you those. Until then, we both hope you have a wonderful week, and as always, we hope you are blessed. Bye.